Have you ever thought that the same system built to educate us might actually be the one that limits us the most? Think about it. You are born with natural curiosity, with the urge to explore, to ask questions, to feel life in its pure form. But then you are placed in a classroom, at a desk, surrounded by walls, strict schedules, endless tests, and rules. And this goes on for more than 10 years, day after day. Now imagine this. Many of the thoughts you believe are your own. Many of the dreams you gave up, even much of the anxiety you carry, are not truly yours. They were planted and shaped by an invisible system. A system that begins its work the moment you are old enough to hold a pencil. And by the end of this video, you will clearly see the ways this system operates and how you can free yourself from it. The last insight we'll share is the most powerful one, because it does not only show the problem, it gives you the key to take back your own mind. So watch until the end. Before we go deeper, if you are someone interested in psychology, philosophy, and discovering the hidden side of human behavior, subscribe to this channel. Like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. How was school for you? Did it unlock your potential? Or did it suppress it? Your story matters, and it may inspire someone else who is asking the same questions in silence. Let's start this journey with a painful but necessary question. What is the true purpose of school? On the surface, we are told it's about education and preparing us for life. But as the German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer said, the greatest works of the human mind often happen not because of school, but in spite of it. Schopenhauer believed schools focus on conformity, not freedom. Real knowledge, he said, comes from reflection, from suffering, from facing life itself, not from memorizing empty facts for tests we forget in a week. For him, schools were factories of mediocrity. He wrote that state education does not aim for the exceptional, it produces the average. And this is one of the first wounds school gives us. From childhood, we learn to fear standing out. We are trained to shrink ourselves to fit in, to value obedience instead of originality, to chase grades and rewards instead of truth. From the first day, a child is taught to raise their hand to speak, to ask for permission even to use the bathroom, to sit for long hours no matter how the body or mind feels. This is not real education, it is conditioning. The goal is not to grow the individual, but to create a controlled worker, a predictable consumer, a quiet citizen. Think about it. Did school ever truly teach you to know yourself, to understand your emotions, to trust your inner voice? Instead, we were trained to look outward for answers, to compare ourselves, to compete, and to conform. And it goes even deeper. When children show curiosity or creativity that does not fit the curriculum, they are often called disruptive. A child who questions too much is seen as a problem. But Schopenhauer warned, talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can even see. And yet, schools often punish those who see differently. They silence the visionary in order to protect the standard. And this damage is not only intellectual, it is emotional. How many of us still feel not good enough because of grades we once got? How many still fear speaking up because a teacher embarrassed us in front of others? How many gave up painting, writing, singing, or dreaming because someone said we weren't talented enough? School teaches us to connect our self-worth to performance and outside approval. And when we don't get that approval, we begin to shrink. Inside. This is not accidental. Friedrich Nietzsche believed systems of control survive by creating weakness. He argued that society and its schools tries to tame the wildness of the human spirit. The classroom, in this sense, becomes a place for training obedience, not excellence. And this obedience does not end with graduation. Once conditioned, we continue to seek approval from bosses, from institutions, even from social media. We become experts at playing roles, but strangers to our true selves. So here's a question. What if the anxiety, exhaustion, and confusion many adults feel today is not a personal flaw, but the result of a system that never taught us how to think, only what to think? That is why both Nietzsche and Schopenhauer spoke about solitude, self-reflection, and even suffering as the way to real knowledge. They believed true freedom only comes when you break away from herd thinking. Nietzsche especially spoke about the idea of the Bermensch, the self-overcoming human, who creates his own values and refuses to be shaped by systems that try to limit him. But then comes the challenge. How do we undo years, even decades, of programming? How do we learn to question what was always presented as unquestionable? And most importantly, how do we take back our minds, not only intellectually, but also emotionally and spiritually? In the next part, we will see how the school system was not designed by chance. It was built in the industrial age, at a time when human beings were treated more like machine parts than living consciousness. We will see how this history still shapes education today, and why knowing this origin is the first step to becoming free from it. But for now, ask yourself, what part of you did you leave behind in school? And is it time to go back and reclaim it? Imagine for a moment that you are not a person, but a product. A product designed to be shaped, packaged, and delivered into a society that values productivity and predictability more than anything else. Would your upbringing look any different? This is not science fiction. It is the actual history of our education system. The schools we know today were not created to awaken wisdom, but to prepare disciplined and obedient workers for factories. Schools were designed to produce, not to enlighten. And if you look closely, you can still see the signs of that factory design. The bells that ring like factory shifts, the uniforms, the rows of desks, the standardized tests, the subjects divided, like an assembly line. Students grouped by age, as if human growth were mechanical, not natural. We were trained not to think deeply, but to follow instructions. Not to create, but to copy. Nietzsche called this the victory of the herd over the individual. Think back to your school years. How much of your time was spent memorizing instead of understanding, repeating instead of questioning, conforming instead of exploring? And what did that do to your mind? The real cost is not only in what we learned, but in what we never learned. Schools rarely taught emotional intelligence. They almost never encouraged us to ask who we really are, or what we love so much we'd sacrifice for it. Instead, at 18 we were told to pick a career path based not on passion, but on grades, prestige, or practicality. As Schopenhauer wrote, the task is not only to see what nobody has yet seen, but to think what nobody has yet thought about the things everyone sees. But schools do not reward this. They reward compliance. And slowly, the inner spark fades. The child who once asked, why, 100 times a day begins to ask, will this be on the test? This is the quiet destruction of the human mind. And it doesn't stop at graduation. The wounds follow us into adulthood. Fear of failure, dependence on authority, fear of uncertainty. Many succeed in careers, yet feel spiritually empty. They chase goals, but wonder why nothing feels fulfilling. Why? Because the system never taught us how to live. It only taught us how to function. Nietzsche called this the death of authenticity. He believed that when we let society's values replace our own, we lose touch with our true nature. We become like actors, playing roles in someone else's script. Both Nietzsche and Schopenhauer agreed that life's deepest meaning cannot simply be given. It has to be created. And that creation begins with unlearning, with questioning, with stepping outside the walls, both physical and mental, that have kept us confined. So let us ask, what is real education? It is not about memorizing disconnected facts. It is not about chasing grades. Real education is learning how to think, not what to think. It is about building our inner world, about having the courage to explore ideas that make us uncomfortable, and most importantly, about the lifelong commitment to truly know ourselves. Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychologist, expressed it clearly. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But how can anyone become their true self when their entire life has been shaped to be someone else? In ancient Greece, education known as paideia was not a bureaucratic system. It was seen as a sacred process of shaping the soul. It included philosophy, poetry, music, ethics, and physical training. The purpose wasn't just to prepare a citizen, but to awaken a human being. To educate was to lead the soul out of ignorance and into the light. But somewhere along the way, we lost this vision. And that loss has serious consequences. A person who has never truly questioned their beliefs, who has never wandered into the dark forest of doubt and self-reflection, is much easier to control. They live with fear. They rely on external rules because they have no inner compass. This is why Nietzsche called for a kind of spiritual rebellion, not for chaos, but to become real. He wrote, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any." How? But finding that why is not something school can give you. It requires your own personal revolution. So pause and reflect. Can you remember a time when your curiosity was punished? When your creativity was mocked? When you were told to sit down, stay quiet, and follow instructions, even when all you wanted was to express yourself? These moments don't just disappear. They shape how we see ourselves. They teach us what is safe and what is dangerous, what is rewarded and what is rejected. And slowly, we internalize these lessons. Don't be too loud. Don't be too different. Don't be too much. Until one day, we forget who we were before this conditioning began. But what if we could remember? What if we could return to the place where the fire inside us was first lit, before it was smothered by routine and expectation? In the next part of this video, we will explore how to begin this awakening. We'll turn to existential psychology, Eastern philosophy, and modern neuroscience to see how we can undo the mental structures created by years of miseducation. You'll discover why discomfort is essential for growth, how solitude can become your greatest teacher, and why Nietzsche saw suffering not as a curse, but as a doorway to strength. But before we move on, let me ask you, if you were never graded, never compared, never told who to be, who would you have become? Leave your answer in the comments. And if you've ever felt like school taught you to be anyone but yourself, know that you are not alone. The journey to reclaim your mind has already started. Let's begin with a radical but freeing truth. The pain you still carry from school is not your personal failure. It is the result of a system designed to mold you, not to empower you. But here's the good news. What was built inside you can be unbuilt. And what was buried can be remembered. To begin this process, we need to face one of the biggest myths planted in us through school, the belief that discomfort is something to avoid. From childhood, we were trained to chase certainty, to cling to easy answers, to avoid failure. Mistakes were punished. Questions without quick answers were dismissed. We were taught to fear the unknown. But Nietzsche saw things differently. For him, discomfort, doubt, and suffering were not flaws. They were the path itself. He wrote, "You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star." That chaos, the confusion, the inner struggle, the unanswered questions is not weakness. It is the raw material of transformation. And yet school taught us the opposite, that knowledge is neat, final, and structured. But real knowledge, the kind that shakes you awake, is messy, circular, and unfinished. This is why so many people graduate with degrees but still feel lost. Because true education, self-education, cannot be handed to you. It must be earned through solitude, reflection, and honest questioning. Carl Jung discovered in his studies of the unconscious that the parts of ourselves we were told to suppress, our wildness, emotions, individuality, don't disappear. They sink into the shadow, hidden from us. Often this shadow is born in childhood, in systems like school that reward certain behaviors and punish others. So what happens when we live by these suppressions? We become strangers to ourselves. We act, but we do not feel. We perform, but we do not live. We forget the inner voice that once whispered dreams and passions that had nothing to do with grades or jobs. Jung believed healing comes when we face this shadow. When we bring light to the parts of us we were taught to hide, the anger, the longing, the rule-breaking spirit. But doing this requires courage, because once you unlearn what school taught you, the world will never look the same. You may realize you were never meant to sit silently for 8 hours a day, that your value cannot be measured by a GPA, that your intelligence may not be logical or mathematical, but emotional, creative, intuitive, or spiritual. And here's the freeing part. Once you reclaim this truth, no degree, no institution, no authority can ever take it from you again. So how do we begin? First, by embracing solitude. Both Schopenhauer and Nietzsche saw solitude not as loneliness, but as liberation. It was the space where one could hear their own thoughts again without the noise of society's expectations. Schopenhauer walked for hours alone. Nietzsche believed clarity comes only when you step away from the herd. He who cannot obey himself will be commanded, he warned. To obey yourself, you must know yourself. And to know yourself, you sometimes must step outside everything you were taught. Second, by engaging in what Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, called logotherapy, the search for meaning. Frankl discovered that even in the darkest conditions, humans could survive if they had a reason to live. And this reason, your why, cannot be found in textbooks. It is found in your suffering, your longings, your deepest questions. It is not created in a classroom, but in the fire of life itself. So ask yourself, when was the last time you asked, what gives my life meaning? Not just what career to follow or what goals to achieve, but what makes me feel truly alive. School never asked you this question, but life does. And we must answer. Third, we must reconnect what school divided: mind and body, thought and feeling. Modern education celebrates intellect, but ignores the heart, the body, and the soul. We were trained to live in our heads, as if we were machines. But humans are emotional, instinctive, spiritual beings. Nietzsche never separated thought from life. He saw the will to power not only as dominance, but as vitality, as life force itself. He urged us to live fully, to embrace not only ideas, but feelings, instincts, and desires. To reclaim your mind, you must also reclaim your body, your energy, your passions. Start listening not only to your thoughts, but to what excites your spirit, what trains you, what you loved before others told you what to love. And finally, you must give yourself permission. Permission to be wrong, to change your mind, to start again. Because one of the greatest lies school taught us is that once you fall behind, it's too late. But the truth is, it's never too late to come back to yourself. In this final part, we'll uncover the most powerful insight, the idea both Schopenhauer and Nietzsche pointed to, but only you can fully live. It is this: you can not only break your conditioning, you can become someone new. You can create your own values, your own education, your own life. You can choose meaning over safety, authenticity over approval, depth over speed. You can turn old wounds into future wisdom. But one last step remains hard, necessary, and yours alone. So ask yourself now, which belief from school are you still carrying that no longer helps you? And what would it take to finally let it go? The answer is coming. You've come far. You've looked at the machine that shaped your early mind. You've questioned beliefs that were handed to you as truth. You've seen how conformity was rewarded and how natural curiosity was often met with silence or shame. Now we reach the final revelation. You were never meant to fit the system. You were meant to outgrow it. Schopenhauer and Nietzsche understood a difficult truth. Systems cannot make you whole. They exist to control, standardize, and limit. But you are not a standard. You are not a machine. You are not here just to function. You are here to awaken. Awakening begins when you stop asking, "What was I trained to believe?" and start asking, "What is deeply true for me?" Nietzsche described this turning point as the birth of the Bermensch, not a perfect or superior person, but someone who creates their own values. A person who steps away from the herd and builds life from the ground up, guided by the fire of their own spirit. The Bermensch is willing to break illusions, to stand alone, to suffer with purpose, to create with joy. This is not rebellion. For chaos, it is liberation from false identities, false duties, and false dreams. Schopenhauer also believed freedom is possible through deep self-examination, detachment, and the courage to see through the world's illusions. He saw life as suffering, yes, but not as despair. Faced honestly, suffering can become wisdom. This is where school failed us most. It taught us to avoid suffering, not to understand it. It trained us to memorize answers, not to live the questions. But today, you begin to live differently. You begin to see that the fear of failing, of speaking up, of taking your own path, was never truly yours. It was borrowed and rehearsed. And it can be UNLEARNED. So what now? Now you become your own teacher. You shape your education through curiosity, not credentials. You read what moves your soul. You study what deepens your understanding. You learn. From life through solitude, silence, beauty, and pain. Now you become your own authority. You stop giving your worth to institutions, resumes, or approval. You stop asking permission to be who already are. You stop shrinking to fit into spaces that never saw your fullness. Now you choose your own meaning. You don't inherit it. You don't download it. You create it through action, reflection, and the slow, sacred work of becoming real. This will not be easy. You may lose people. You may feel lost. You will be tempted to return to safe systems, old roles, and the illusion of certainty. But as Nietzsche warned, the snake that cannot shed its skin must die. Minds that cannot change their opinions cease to be minds. You must shed. Shed the need to be perfect. Shed the voice that says you're behind. Shed the belief that only authority gives value. Shed the shame of not being what school expected. In this shedding, you will find a self older than systems, wilder than rules, more alive than grades. You will find your true education. Here is the final truth. School ends, but education doesn't. Real education is life itself. It happens when you step into uncertainty with curiosity, face suffering with open eyes, turn wounds into wisdom, and confusion into clarity. It happens when you see that every moment, every failure, breakthrough, and silence is your classroom. Nietzsche said, "Become who you are." That is your assignment. Now, not from a teacher or a system, but from life itself. And you cannot fail it unless you refuse to begin. So start. Ask the questions that scare you. Read the authors who challenge you. Enter spaces where no one claps, but your soul sings. Let your education be wild, unpredictable, and beautiful. Let it be yours. And remember, you are not broken. You were never broken. You were buried under expectations, conditioning, and the silence of unspoken dreams. Now you are rising, not as the student you were trained to be, but as the human you were born to become. I'll leave you with this. What would your life look like if you stopped living as a product of the system and started living as a creation of your own soul? Share your thoughts in the comments. Someone out there needs the courage you're about to offer. If this journey moved you, subscribe and share to help awaken others. The world doesn't need more obedience. It needs more liveness. Until next time, question deeply, live freely, and never stop becoming. Thanks for watching.